Welcome to the Green Business Podcast. Subscribe now for more episodes. Hello, I'm Jonathan Howl, a Business Energy Advisor at Coventry City Council, and welcome to our latest edition of the Green Business Programme podcast. Now, you won't have heard from us for a while. Our new Decarbonisation Net Zero funding programme has just been announced, so this podcast is designed to give you a flavour of the new programme. Now, today we're going to outline the funding available for businesses for energy improvements, but also try and emphasise the general support we're aiming to provide to our business community, along with the benefits of engaging with us as a team. Now, to accompany this podcast, we also have a series of webinars coming up starting on the 15th of November, where you can engage and ask more in-depth questions. But for today, it's about outlining the programme in more detail and giving you a taster of what the programme will give you. Joining me today are three colleagues who work within different areas of the programme and who will give you the benefit of their expertise. So our first speaker today is Martin Grant from Aston University. Martin, good morning, and thanks for joining us today. Tim, can you firstly introduce yourself and give an explanation of your role at Aston University, please?
Yeah, I'm the project manager of the Decarbonisation Net Zero Programme. The programme's delivered out of Aston University in support with our partners, so the guys at Enviro and yourself at Coventry Council, and the programme's geared towards basically helping businesses to manage and just be better and more efficient with their energy consumption.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. So just briefly then, so people on the podcast as an introduction, who exactly are Aston University? We've all heard of you, obviously. Who are you guys, and what is your general involvement in the programme? How come you're involved within the structure of the actual programme itself?
So Aston University is based in the heart of Birmingham. It grew out of a technical college it first started out in 1895, and its one of its primary areas of focus is to be very much a business focused university in terms of supporting not just regional businesses but also students that come along in order to how they can then kind of connect into better quality employment. So it's very much a kind of looking at real world problems and real world issues. So that's part of the reason that we've then become involved, and we applied through to West Midlands Combined Authority under some funding that was known as the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, and we were successful in that application. So we're leading the delivery of the overall Decarbonisation Net Zero Programme.
Fantastic. Just good to know where your involvement sits. So thank you for that. So in terms of the programme itself then, could you just give us a general outline of the actual programme? For example, the sort of structure of it. What I'm looking for really in your answer, to be honest with you, is what are the main objectives of the programme, as in what's the main benefits to our business community?
Yeah.
But obviously, let's be honest, most people on this call that are listening, or on this podcast rather, they want to know what sort of grant funding is available. So could you just sort of talk us through the high level sort of benefits of the programme, please?
Sure. It's at a high level, it's driven to help the West Midlands region in terms of its overall efficiency, in terms of helping its running, supporting businesses. And obviously, the whole issue of kind of carbon, greenhouse gases and the cost of energy is at the forefront of most people's minds at the moment. So the core kind of deliverable is to basically help businesses to be more efficient in terms of how they manage their energy. So we are looking to do this on quite a pragmatic level. So the businesses will initially kind of contact us and go through an assessment to ensure that they're eligible. The eligibility criteria is pretty basic. Are you a small business, and are you based within the appropriate kind of area? If you are, then you'll pretty much kind of cover that. We're then looking to support two types of businesses, ones that are much more energy intensive in their kind of energy consumption. So businesses that, for example, would spend more than 10% of their turnover on their energy bill would be defined as being energy intensive. And also for the vast majority of small businesses that are of a more regular energy consumption kind of profile, we will then also be looking to support those. The way that we do it is taking the businesses through an energy assessment that will include a series of recommendations that the businesses can then implement. And once they've completed the energy assessment, then they will be in a position to be able to apply for grant funding in order to be able to help them to implement the recommendations that come as part of the assessment. So the assessment isn't just a description of what is it that you're currently doing. It's also what are you currently doing? How can that potentially be improved? What processes might you want to change? What technologies might you want to introduce into your business? And that's the area where the grant can then basically help the businesses in order to be able to put those recommendations into place. But the assessment is a criteria in order to be able to actually apply for the grant in the first place.
Okay, good answer. And I believe just to clarify for our listeners, everything is free of charge. There's no charge to the business at all. So the audit is free. The grant is a grant. It's not a loan or anything you have to pay back. Yep. Could you just give us a quick description of the actual maximum and minimum sort of size grants and what the intervention rates are, if that's possible?
Yeah, the maximum.
What can they expect as a maximum?
The maximum is up to 100,000. It will depend upon what type of, some it's quite detailed, so it depend on what kind of recommendations are made in terms of whether it's implementing different types of energy technologies, whether it's ground source heat pumps or solar panels, or whether it's looking at improving the actual efficiency of the business itself. The smaller kind of grants are of the order of a few £1,000s, and then it kind of goes up to a maximum of 100,000. The grants are like most of the finance that's kind of produced with UK government. You make the initial application, that's then approved. You go ahead and basically implement the actual work. And once that's been implemented and you've got the appropriate invoices and evidence to show that that's been put forward, then the funding is retrospectively given to the companies.
Perfect answer. So effectively, as a business, the last piece of the jigsaw is getting the money from the UK Share Prosperity Fund through us. Been well explained. So yep. Thank you. As a business, what kind of timescales would I expect for this support? I mean, how long would it typically take before I make an initial inquiry to getting somebody to engage with me and then to get the monies, or is that really open-ended in your opinion?
It's quite open-ended. It's basically driven by the businesses, because if we've got someone that's, say, a small accounting firm employing a few staff, then they will have sets of needs. If we're looking at something like a larger manufacturing business that might be turning over 30 million and employing 100 staff across 2 or 3 different sites, then obviously the depth of time involved in the assessment itself will kind of take longer from that point of view. The initial process is basically, which I believe we'll come on to later, but it's initially registering with the Business Growth West Midlands website, and then we will, having received the initial information, we will then get back in contact within a couple of days, and then it's the usual stuff in terms of how this fits into the business's timescale, because they may not be able to go straight away. It might take a couple of weeks for the initial meeting, and then depending upon how long the assessment process takes to complete and sign off, then the business would be looking to then apply for a grant through their relevant local authority. So I would have thought a minimum time would be a matter of a few weeks to get to a stage where you're at a grant application ready process. But depending on the size of the business and what's involved, it might be a bit longer. But it's primarily driven by the business's requirements.
And there are lots of variables to take into account, aren't they, of course, with every sort of installation application and so on. So
absolutely.
Just drawing on that then, as what is the end date of this current funding programme, just so people know that when they've got to get things all wrapped up by?
Yeah. The programme, it will finish on end of March 2025, which sounds like it's a reasonable length of time away, but it's not completely open-ended. So we've got limits on the number of businesses that we can support. It's just not like an open-ended piggy bank here from the government. So I would suggest to businesses, if they're interested, to make an initial inquiry as soon as possible, because it will take a while to obviously work through the initial application.
And obviously, the sooner you, as a business, the sooner you get involved and apply, the sooner you'll start saving money as well. So it's a double win, really, isn't it? In that
absolutely,
respect.
completely fundamentally, yeah.
So, just last question then for yourself: if I'm a business and I want to get involved, and this sounds right up my street, how's the best way to go about doing that? Is it a straightforward process?
Yeah, basically, you just need to complete a registration form on the Business Growth West Midlands website on their net zero page. We're going to put a link to that in the comment section on the website that the podcast is based on. So initially, it's a pretty straightforward form. There's 2 pages, and it's just basic information about the business, just to ensure that, as we discussed earlier on, that it's eligible and appropriate for the grant. So it's basic business information. That's then sent through to us at Aston University. We'll then just basically go through that and check the information. And then after that, you'll then be, depending on which area you're in, you'll be contacted either by someone at Aston or someone from Coventry, or Steve covering the Black Country area.
Fantastic, good answer. It sounds really easy. So if anybody's out there listening to this podcast, as I say, that is interested, get in touch. Really straightforward, and we're all there to help. So fantastic. Martin, thank you very much for explaining the programme to us in more detail. I'm going to quickly move on now to our second speaker today, who is Steve Stones from Enviro. Steve, for our listeners, can you please introduce yourself, your business, and give a quick explanation of your involvement within the programme?
Hi, Jonathan. Enviro, well-established business based in Rugby. We offer a range of energy management and low and net zero carbon services to businesses from a range of different sectors. Within the Decarbonisation Net Zero Programme, we're one of the project's delivery partners, as Martin explained, providing support to organisations located in the Black Country. And in relation to this project, the Black Country is defined as the local authorities of Wolverhampton, Walsall, Sandwell and Dudley. So any organisation within that area will probably be supported by us.
You cover a large area then, by the looks of it. So you must be very busy for first off. So good luck to you. Could you then just obviously talk us through how an energy audit works? Sort of what are the sort of bones of it, and what would you do once you engage and get to site to see a business?
Yeah, it's interesting because Martin's already mentioned that it does vary depending on the business itself and the type of organisation. But the framework is, we have an objective, and the primary objective of the audit is to try and identify cost-effective ways that an organisation can make both environmental and economic improvements by reducing energy consumption.
Understood. So what would you typically need then from a business to start that ball rolling? Presumably you'd need some access to their billing data and their sort of energy bills and so on. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. It's always very helpful if we're able to collect review data from the organisation prior to the audit. This allows us to make the best use of the time that we have on the site with the business, and it also allows us to identify any possible areas for improvements before we get into any detailed discussions on the site. It gives us that opportunity to be aware of what is happening before we get there. The most useful information is the details on the business's energy consumption, both in terms of levels and patterns. We can then compare this to the working patterns of the business or any expected seasonal variations that relate to the business activities or the weather, especially with regard to heating. This information can be in the form of bills from suppliers, or for some larger sites or those that have got more recent smart meters, then we may well have access to half-hourly meters, and that gives us a greater degree of accuracy or granularity in the information.
And that then gives you your baseline of the use typically for a whole year, I presume. Is that right?
That's right. And once we've got that baseline established, it gives something that can be measured from when changes are made or events happen within an organisation.
Got it, understood. So in general then, obviously, well, it's all interesting, but the more interesting bit is what kind of recommendations would typically be within an energy report that you look to put together?
Again, the recommendations vary from business to business, but some of the more typical recommendations will include improvements to lighting, both the fittings and the controls. I think most people are aware of the benefits that are available from LED lighting, and it just depends what changes people have already made. We'll look at heating systems, and again, we will look at the heat generation methodologies and the distribution systems for getting that heat around an organisation. And we'll also look at the controls that are in place to ensure that the performance of the heating system is actually optimised. This includes zoning of systems or improvements to prevent heat loss, fast action roller shutter doors, insulation, that type of thing. We also look in some of the more industrial businesses. The recommendations could include how compressed air generation and distribution is managed, leak detection, elimination methods, the best methods of matching generation and supply so that the demand within an organisation of forest air is always met by the most appropriate supply and the most appropriate pieces of equipment. We'll talk to people about the benefits of variable speed systems. Other recommendations will include fans, motors, conveyor systems, ovens, furnaces, general installations, and benefits associated with structured energy monitoring and how people can to learn how to look at energy and not it be such an invisible part of their business, and help them make ways of controlling that in the future.
And does it look at things like renewable energy and solar panels and things like that as well?
Yeah, it does. We will look at the potential benefits of renewable energy generation, and we'll make recommendations if appropriate.
Okay, and then what would the, as a business, and businesses that I meet, they really want those sort of high end figures and objectives and data. So what would the energy report include? I presume it would have on there an estimation of the appropriate or approximate capital costs. Presumably paybacks are a big thing that you work to as well, I would have thought. Is that about right?
No, it is. All the recommendations we make will include an estimate of the benefits of the suggested improvements, along with the cost and the payback. The next step would be for the business to obtain detailed quotes for the projects that require capital investments, because these will also be required for any grant application that they go on to make.
Got it. Understood. No, thank you. So in terms of barriers, which we do meet out there in the field, what are the sort of common misconceptions that businesses face when trying to become either more environmentally friendly or trying to go on their net zero journey? What kind of things have you seen out there in your experience?
Many organisations tend to believe that they don't have the skills or the time within their own organisation to deal with this particular issue, whilst trying to deal with all the other business issues that are competing for what could be a finite amount of resource, whether that's time available or the cash available to do something about it. This project provides organisations with what I think is a great opportunity to invest a small amount of time to get things started and to support the consultants during the review. The rest of the work will then go on in the background until the recommendations are presented back to the management team of the businesses to consider.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point to raise, actually. In my experience, a lot of businesses that I've worked with, they haven't got a sustainability manager. They haven't got a sustainability advisor working for them. They can't afford to get a consultant in to do the work for them. So this, if anybody's listening again, this is a good opportunity to get this kind of work done for free and hopefully get some grant funding on the side of it as well. So again, it's a very much a win-win for your business, basically. So talking about obviously the area we're covering all of the West Midlands. There's a lot of different businesses out there in that area. Are there, in your experience, any specific sectors or industries where there's more of an opportunity for this to be applied, or is it pretty much? I know it's difficult to give an overall answer, but is it very much a sector specific, or is it more of a generic kind of advice we'll be giving to people out there?
I think it's important to stress that all businesses and all sectors have opportunities to improve their carbon emissions or reduce them. How big an improvement anybody can actually make depends where you're starting from. Many smaller and many commercial rather than industrial companies believe that there are not many significant opportunities for them. But all businesses should take every opportunity to save energy, as saving energy also saves money. One of the things we try and get across to people is that if they're not doing it and their competitor is, then they're losing out. They're actually putting themselves at a competitive disadvantage. Any organisation that's got aging equipment and limited controls on the process will have opportunities to reduce energy costs by installing more efficient equipment. And this is where the project's grant scheme can also help. There are also improvements that can be made by all businesses by behavioural changes, and these can be encouraged by learning and understanding the drivers within the business that consume energy, and then explaining to the workforce how they, as actual individuals within the business, can make a difference to the performance of their business and help secure their long-term prosperity or future within their organisation.
Fantastic. So it gets all stakeholders working in the same direction then, by the sounds of which is what it's all about. So fantastic. based on your time working within your role, have you got any good case studies you could tell us about, sort of companies that you've helped? And also maybe, I know it's a difficult thing to ask, but have you got an example of who you helped gain the highest level of efficiency improvements? Very open-ended question, I apologise, but I'm trying to get it to sort of say, look, I work with this business and we save them a lot of money per annum. Then that's obviously going to be a real interest to our community listening to the podcast.
Yeah, I'll try and give you a good example. That in the 20 plus years in industry and then 20 plus years in management, so I've seen many examples of improvements, and the majority of these start with that simple baseline audit that we've talked about earlier on, and knowing exactly what is causing energy to be consumed at different times of the day, different times of the week, different times of the year. Once that understanding is achieved and a baseline performance measure put in place, it's then possible to measure the impact of any changes or improvements that are made. I believe that the simplest and most cost-effective improvements come from simple changes in working practices, such as turning things off when they're not required. I know it sounds really basic, but there are instances where this does not happen. Good example of this is when a relatively small company that we were working with operated an inline drying oven at the end of a process. Not big, only about 18 inches long for a conveyor belt to run through. The drying oven was left running overnight and on a weekend because it was old and it was deemed difficult to restart after being switched off. This is quite a common reason that we're given for leaving something on when it's not needed, especially when it's got a PLC controller and people say, no, it's old, it's fragile, very temperamental. But when we determined what the cost associated with leaving the oven on was when it was not required, we managed to establish that a new oven that could be turned on and off without any problems cost approximately 50% of the annual cost of leaving the old oven running, resulting in a payback period of only 6 months. The issue here is not really getting to grips with an understanding of what the cost of not doing something is. Once you understand what the cost of the waste energy is, it then gives you an indication of what you can invest to actually solve the problem that's creating the waste in the first place.
Yeah, fantastic. A 6 month payback is fantastic. Really good to see that it's that easy to achieve, basically. So yeah, good answer and good case study. Thank you.
If you want a slightly larger one with some numbers attached to it, then been working with an organisation in the Black Country with very significant energy consumption and instigated a monitoring process for looking at detailed equipment. And over the last 12 to 15 months, they've managed to reduce their energy costs by approximately £750,000. That's starting from a very big number. That's an opportunity that they've taken, which will allow them to continue to sell at a competitive rate.
Yes.
Those savings, or that scale of savings, don't get repeated year on year, but you need to be able to maintain them and then make the more incremental changes once you've made the big gains.
Yeah, understood. So aside from the obvious cost-saving benefits, what other advantages can improving efficiency bring to a business? For example, I'm thinking improved sustainability, staff retention, accreditation. So what other benefits will this give to a business that's trying to operate in today's trying climate?
Well, most organisations are part of someone else's supply chain, and more organisations are asking the companies in their supply chains what they're doing about their carbon reduction plans. Some large organisations will now exclude any company from their supply chains who don't have a proactive energy monitoring and improvement plan in place. For many, it's going to be a requirement before too long, and if an organisation has not started yet, then this project is a good opportunity to actually make that start.
Yeah, it's a good point, actually. I have seen that myself when I'm out and about in the field. I have seen companies in Coventry that have to demonstrate that they can save 20%, 25% of their energy per annum in order to carry on working within that supply chain. So it just shows you how it is coming in, and it is so important to get it right. So thank you. There were really good answers there, Steve. Thank you very much. They've given our community some real food for thought. So thanks again for your time today. Just moving on to our final speaker today, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Sara Ballinger, to the podcast. Sara works with me at Coventry City Council. Morning, Sara. Thanks for joining us. Could you please introduce yourself to our listeners and outline your role at Coventry City Council?
Hi there, John. Yeah, I'm Sara Ballinger. I've been a business energy advisor with Coventry City Council for 7 years now. So I previously worked on the Coventry and Warwickshire Green Business Programme, which was the kind of predecessor to the current Decarbonisation Programme. So I go out to businesses, conduct energy audit, provide advice to SMEs, and where eligible, I can help businesses through the grant funding process as well.
Good stuff. Thank you. So just to kick off with your questions then, something we mentioned at the start of the podcast, but I'm keen to get your expert thoughts on it too. Could you just tell our listeners about the overall benefits that SMEs can gain by adopting the greener processes we've already spoken about? Just wanted to get your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, so probably repeating some of the points, but I suppose it's important to reiterate, I think reducing primary energy usage, just reducing businesses' costs overall. And we've seen how, volatile energy prices have been over the last few years, and just addressing this, doing what you can around energy efficiency, I suppose, makes your business more resilient, now and in the future for any potential rises. But yeah, I think Steve was saying about supply chain as well. And I think that's something that's a lot more prevalent over the last few years. I think, I've noticed a shift. So businesses are saying, our customers are asking for, carbon footprint, what our sustainability policy is, are we monitoring this? And I think that's becoming more and more of a driver, and I think it's now seen more and more as just good business sense rather than an added extra.
Got to stay ahead of the curve, basically, I think.
Definitely.
Basically. No, good answer. Thank you. So just linking back into ourselves at Coventry City Council, how can Coventry City Council assist SMEs on their journey towards the sustainability we've mentioned? How can we help people sort of improve sustainability and lower their carbon footprint?
Yeah, so we can assist SMEs in the Coventry area. So we can go out, provide a free energy audit, so kind of baseline their carbon emissions, what they're spending each year on energy. We would do a walk around of the premises, look at, the fabric efficiency, lighting, processes around the units, anything that uses energy, and take note of how improvements can be made. And then an energy report will be produced for the business that highlights the different recommendations. We would outline payback periods, the potential monetary saving from implementing different measures. And then potentially we can also help businesses with grant funding. So there's grant funding of 50% of the capital cost available. So as advisors, we would help businesses through the funding application process as well. I suppose it's worth noting we've also got the Green Business Network as well, opportunity for businesses to access networking events, webinars, podcasts such as this one. So lots of information around, sustainability topic. And we do a monthly newsletter as well as part of that. And sometimes we highlight, different businesses for case studies as well. So it can be a good kind of PR opportunity as well.
Yeah, you raise a good point there, actually. It's important to stress that this isn't just about the grant money. It's about the whole sort of support and service wrap as well, in terms of other events and knowledge transfer and sort of podcasts and so on out there. So it's also about the knowledge that we've got to help your business become more sustainable, basically. So good answer. So I've asked Steve this already, Sarah, but I do like my case studies. So could you give us an example of a business that you've helped become more energy efficient, and sort of what recommendations you gave them to help achieve that?
Yeah, so I suppose like Steve kind of worked with a range of businesses. So perhaps a typical example in Coventry would be a precision engineering company. So they have about 40 employees in quite a, I suppose, ageing industrial unit. So I assisted them with an energy audit highlighting different recommendations, and then they received, I think it was 8,500 towards different measures. So looking at fabric efficiency, so insulated roller shutter door just to reduce heat loss, and they looked at kind of like heating zones, so adding in like an insulated wall as well. And they also looked at LED lighting with improved controls, which So I think combined the electricity and gas saved about 60% on their bills, which is obviously a massive chunk on their annual spend.
Saving 60%, and they're getting £8,500 towards the improvements as well. So it just shows you the figures we're looking at are not nominal figures, are they?
Yeah, basically. Definitely. And I think I suppose the added benefits, so the business didn't necessarily put the application in for this, but things like improving the working conditions for staff, making it less drafty, but it's all important for productivity, staff morale.
Yeah,
those added benefits.
The soft benefits of the green narrative, and you can promote your business as a forward-thinking company as well. So there's all these other, again, tying into my previous point, there's lots of other considerations to make other than just getting some grant money, isn't there, basically, on the whole thing? No, good stuff. Okay, good answer. Final question, you'll be pleased to hear. Could you just give us a bit of a background to how the council's support for this programme ties into our broader environmental goals and targets for the city of Coventry, just to sort of tie it into the bigger picture for us in our Coventry area?
Yeah, so council went out for consultation with the draft climate change strategy in Coventry, which tried to get input from local citizens, businesses. So there's an opportunity to input into that and get, I suppose, the voice of SMEs. And as a follow-on to that, there's going to be like a roadmap, which I suppose outlines all the tangible actions, we can do to achieve net zero in the city. And I think the council assisting SMEs around carbon reduction is really important. So providing that advice, that funding, which could be the difference in them actually going ahead and doing the measures. So I think that's really important, just that we get out to as many businesses as possible in Coventry, because they do make up a good chunk of the city's annual carbon emissions.
Of course. And just as another quick thought, I know I'm asking this question to myself as well, but do you find that companies out there are becoming more and more aware of the benefits of achieving net zero and being more sustainable? Because I've definitely noticed an improvement in that in the last year or so.
Yeah, definitely. I think, there's been a big shift over the last few years. So I think before, when we did the early Green Business Programme, we would see the early adopters, like the really keen businesses. But now I think it's just trickling down to the majority of businesses are addressing this issue and suppose realising they need to do something. It's not just an added extra anymore, it's essential.
Good stuff. It is gathering pace quickly, which is great, and it's good that we are there to help support companies do that as well. So thank you, thanks Sarah for those answers.
Thank you.
And just quickly, thanks to all of our guests for their time today, and thanks to our listeners for tuning in. If you're interested in securing an energy audit that we've talked about it in detail, and also the potential funding for your business, then please register via the link in the podcast description. If you also need more information, there are also website links to the programme on there too, as well as details to register for our upcoming podcast on the 15th of November. Remember, we are here to support you, so we look forward to hearing from you soon and engaging as best we can. I'm Jonathan Howl. Best of luck with your net zero journeys.